Welcome to Bleeding Wall. You think you know the person you love, but what if the man sleeping beside you hides dark, deadly secrets? Tonight we reveal 9 true horror stories of husbands whose lies spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and terror. From poisoned drinks to hidden rooms and chilling betrayals, these are husbands you'll never forget. Watch closely, because some lies are more dangerous than death. Story 1. The Double Life. I used to believe I was one of the lucky ones. My friends often told me how fortunate I was to have a husband like Mark. Successful, charming, and always ready with a smile that could disarm even the coldest heart. On the surface, Mark was everything a woman could want. He worked hard, he provided, and he played the role of a perfect partner so convincingly that even I didn't question it for a long time. But lies have a way of seeping through cracks, no matter how carefully someone tries to cover them. It started with the little things. Mark was always working late, always too tired when he came home. His phone became something he guarded like a weapon. He used to leave it lying on the counter while he showered, but now it was glued to him, locked, silenced, hidden. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone needs privacy, right? But then there were the bank withdrawals, large sums of money leaving our account with no explanation. When I asked, he dismissed it with vague answers, business expenses or a surprise I'm planning. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until he fell asleep and slipped his phone from his hand. My heart hammered in my chest as I unlocked it. He never thought I'd figure out his passcode. But I had. What I found froze me. Dozens of pictures of another woman, then another, children's photos, messages saying, "Good night, love," and "Can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped as I realized these weren't just affairs. These were families, entire families. My husband was living a double life. Actually, not just double, triple. 3 different women, 3 different homes, 3 different lives he was weaving together with his web of lies. I felt sick. When I confronted him the next morning, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Who are these women, Mark? Who are these children?" For a moment he looked stunned, but then to my horror, his expression changed. It wasn't guilt I saw. It was rage. "You should never have looked through my phone," he said coldly. He stood up, towering over me, his face twisting into something unrecognizable. The man I had shared my life with for years suddenly looked like a stranger. "You don't understand," he hissed. "They don't matter." "None of them matter. You're the one who wasn't supposed to find out." Fear shot through me. "What do you mean?" "Mark, what are you talking about?" He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "If you tell anyone if you ruin this for me, I'll make sure no one ever finds you. Do you understand?" I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the couch. My heart raced as his words sank in. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about survival. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing beside me. Every shadow in the room felt like it was closing in. The next day, while he was at work, or at least pretending to be, I packed a small bag and ran. I went straight to the police. At first, they didn't believe me. It sounded too bizarre. But when I showed them the photos, the messages, the proof, their skepticism faded. They promised to investigate. But Mark was always one step ahead. When the police tried to track him down, one of the addresses I gave them was empty. The second belonged to a woman who hadn't seen him in weeks. The third was the worst. The house looked normal enough. Toys in the yard, curtains drawn. But inside it was a nightmare. The woman, his so-called wife, was missing. Her neighbors said she hadn't been seen in over a month. And her children, they were gone too. No one could find them. That's when I realized this wasn't just a liar husband. This was something far darker. I never went back to my home. I couldn't. I knew he would come for me if I did. The police advised me to stay with family in another city, and I did. I changed my number, deleted my social media, tried to erase myself from his reach. But even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that he's out there, watching, waiting. Sometimes when I'm walking home from work at night, I feel eyes on me. I hear footsteps that vanish when I turn around. And once, not long ago, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. Just 4 words, scrawled in handwriting I knew all too well. You shouldn't have left. Story 2. The Locked Room. When I first moved in with Chris, everything felt like a dream. He was attentive, charming, and generous. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. We married quickly, and though my family thought it was rushed, I trusted him. There was only one rule in our new home: never go into the basement. At first, I didn't think much of it. Every house has secrets, and maybe Chris was just embarrassed about a cluttered storage space. Whenever I asked, he'd laugh it off. "It's just junk," he'd say. "You don't need to worry about it." But the longer I lived there, the more the rule gnawed at me. Why did he keep it locked at all times? Why did he always carry the basement key on his person, even at night? Sometimes when I walked past the basement door, I swore I heard something. A faint sound. Not pipes, not creaks. Something else. Something alive. One evening, curiosity overwhelmed me. Chris had gone on a sudden business trip, leaving me alone in the house for the weekend. I searched his dresser, his jacket pockets, his office drawers, until finally I found it, the basement key. My hands trembled as I approached the door. The metal felt cold in my grip as I slid the key into the lock. The door opened with a groan, releasing a smell that made my stomach churn. Damp, metallic, and sour. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. A single bulb flickered above, casting weak light into the darkness below. At first I saw shelves stacked with boxes, just like Chris had said. But then I looked closer. On the shelves weren't boxes of junk. They were carefully organized folders, each labeled with a woman's name. Photos were pinned to the front of each folder, smiling women with their arms wrapped around Chris. Some of the names I recognized from messages I'd glimpsed on his phone. Others were strangers. But every folder had something else, a red X marked across it. Except for one. That one had my name, my face. No red X, not yet. I staggered back, my heart hammering so loud I thought it would give me away. I stumbled deeper into the basement, searching for answers, and that's when I saw it. Against the far wall were clothes, dresses, coats, shoes, all belonging to different women. I lifted one dress. It was torn, stained with something dark. My breath caught, and then I saw the photos, dozens of Polaroids taped along the wall, women smiling at first. Then later, the same women crying, terrified. And finally, blank spaces where pictures had been ripped away. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. My knees felt weak as realization crashed over me. These weren't just affairs. Chris wasn't just a liar. He was a predator. A sound behind me made me whip around. The basement door at the top of the stairs slammed shut. I froze. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the stairs. "Emily!" Chris's voice was calm, but it chilled me more than if he had screamed. "I told you not to come down here." I stumbled backward, my eyes darting for an exit. There was none. Chris reached the bottom of the stairs, his face shadowed. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were cold, empty, like I had never seen them before. "You weren't supposed to see this," he whispered. "But now that you have, we'll have to move you to the end of the line." I bolted. Adrenaline surged through me as I shoved past him, clawing at the stairs. His hand brushed my arm, but I yanked free, scrambling toward the door. I slammed into it with my shoulder. It didn't budge. Locked. I screamed, pounding my fists, while Chris's calm footsteps approached behind me. "Shh," he cooed. "It'll be easier if you don't fight." In a blind panic, I reached into my pocket and felt the key. I fumbled with it, my hands shaking violently. Behind me, Chris was almost close enough to touch. At the last second, the key slid in. The lock clicked. I burst through the door, slamming it behind me, locking it from the other side. Chris's fists pounded against the wood, shaking it on its hinges. "Emily!" his voice bellowed. "You can't hide from me. You are mine." I ran, out of the house, into the street, screaming for help. By the time the police arrived, the basement was empty. The folders, the clothes, the photos, everything was gone. Chris had vanished too. They searched for months, but he was never caught. I live in hiding now, changing addresses every few months, terrified that one day he'll find me. Because sometimes late at night I hear noises outside my window, footsteps, whispers. And once, when I came home from work, I found something taped to my front door. A Polaroid of me, sleeping. Story 3, The Poison in the Tea. I always thought Tom was a man of routines. He liked things a certain way. His shirts ironed, his shoes polished, his meals on time. At first I thought it was sweet, even endearing. He said it was because he grew up in a strict household, and I respected that. But there was one ritual that stood out above all others. Every night, no matter what, Tom insisted on making me a cup of tea. "Chamomile," he'd say with a smile. "It'll help you sleep." The first time he did it, I thought it was romantic. By the third week, I thought it was obsessive. By the third month, I started to dread it, because every night after that tea, I felt worse. At first, it was subtle, a drowsiness that hit harder than normal, headaches that lingered through the morning. Then came the nausea, the dizziness, the weakness in my limbs. I told myself it was stress, maybe a vitamin deficiency, but deep down, something gnawed at me. One evening, while Tom stirred my tea, I asked, "Why don't you ever drink it yourself?" He chuckled softly, setting the cup in front of me. "Because it's for you. You need your rest." His eyes lingered on me as I lifted the cup to my lips, and in that moment, I felt an unease I couldn't shake. So the next night, when he wasn't looking, I poured the tea into a houseplant instead. The leaves turned brown within hours. My blood ran cold. The following day, I took a sample of the tea in a small vial to a friend who worked in a lab. When the results came back, I felt the floor drop beneath me. It was poison. A slow-acting toxin, the kind that could mimic illness, the kind that could kill someone over weeks or months without raising suspicion. My hands shook as I held the report. The man I had married, the man who tucked me in every night, was trying to kill me. That night I pretended to drink the tea. I smiled, thanked him, kissed his cheek, all while my insides screamed. I poured it down the drain when he wasn't watching, but Tom was sharp, too sharp. A few nights later, he watched me more closely. His eyes didn't leave the cup until I had drained it in front of him. My heart raced as the bitter liquid slid down throat, and I wondered if I'd wake up in the morning. I did, but barely. My body felt heavy, my vision blurred. I knew I didn't have much time. I needed a plan. The next evening I told him I wanted to make the tea for once. "You do so much for me," I said sweetly. "Let me return the favor." For a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes, suspicion, but then he smiled. "Of course, darling." In the kitchen my hands shook as I prepared the tea, but this time I slipped the poison into his cup instead. When I handed it to him, he raised an eyebrow. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said, forcing a smile. He took a sip. For a moment nothing happened. Then his smile faltered. His lips parted slightly. His breathing quickened. He looked at me with wide eyes, realization dawning too late. "You!" he rasped, clutching his chest. "Yes," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I know." He collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, watching the man who had been killing me slowly, now fighting for his own life. But then something strange happened. He laughed, even as his body shook, even as he coughed and writhed. He laughed. His voice was raspy, broken, but filled with a kind of madness I had never heard before. "You think this ends with me?" he wheezed. "You have no idea." Then his eyes rolled back, and his body went still. I thought it was over. I thought I was free. But the nightmare had only begun. The police came. They investigated. The autopsy confirmed the poison. At first they looked at me with suspicion, but when I showed them the lab results proving what Tom had been giving me, they believed me. They told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That's what they said. But luck has nothing to do with the way I feel now, because the truth about Tom didn't end with his death. When the police searched his office, they found notebooks, detailed accounts of everything he had done to me, every symptom I had described, every excuse he had given. But it wasn't just me. There were other names, other women, dates, dosages. And next to each name was a single word, finished. Except for mine just said, "In progress." It's been months since that night. The poison is out of my system now, but sometimes I still feel it. The dizziness, the weakness, the fog. Phantom echoes of what he did to me. And sometimes when I'm drifting off to sleep, I swear I hear his voice in the dark. You didn't drink enough. Story 4. The Disappearing Wife. When I first met Adam, he seemed like every girl's dream. Polite, attentive, charming. He worked in finance, dressed sharp, and had this quiet confidence that drew people in. My friends warned me it felt too good to be true, but I didn't listen. He swept me off my feet, and within a year, we were married. For the first few months, everything felt perfect. Adam cooked for me, brought me flowers, even left sweet notes tucked into my purse before work. I told myself I had finally found my happy ending, but the cracks started to show soon enough. It began with the neighbors. An older woman across the street introduced herself one morning while I was fetching the mail. She smiled politely, but then asked, "How long have you been with Adam?" "A little over a year," I said proudly. Her face went pale. "That's strange. His wife was living here just last year." I laughed nervously. "I'm his wife." She shook her head. "No, dear." A different woman. Her words lodged in my mind like a splinter I couldn't ignore. That night I asked Adam about it. He barely looked up from his laptop. "She was a tenant. Before you. Don't listen to the neighbors. They gossip." Something in his tone made me drop it, but the seed of doubt was already planted. From then on, I started noticing things I couldn't explain. A pair of earrings in the jewelry box that weren't mine. A perfume scent on Adam's clothes I didn't wear. And in the attic, tucked away behind dusty boxes, I found a framed wedding photo. Not of us, of Adam, smiling, happy, holding another woman. When I confronted him, he snapped. His eyes darkened, his jaw clenched. "You've been snooping," he hissed. "Don't ever go digging where you don't belong." He yanked the photo from my hands and stormed out of the room. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried, realizing I didn't really know the man I had married. The next day, I went back to the attic. The photo was gone, but I found something else. A small box filled with IDS driver's licenses. All women, different names, different faces. One of them was the woman from the wedding photo. Another one looked eerily like me. My blood ran cold. The pattern was clear now. Adam wasn't just lying. He was collecting wives. And when he was done with one, she disappeared. The missing women weren't accidents. They were his victims. I tried to leave that night. I packed a small bag, waited until Adam was asleep, and crept toward the front door. But as my hand touched the knob, his voice stopped me. "Going somewhere." He was standing in the hallway, his face half hidden in shadow, his eyes glinting with something cruel. "You're not the first to try that," he whispered, "but you'll be the last." I bolted for the back door, but he was faster. He slammed me against the wall, his hand clamping over my mouth. I struggled, biting, clawing, kicking, until finally my knee connected with his stomach. He grunted, loosening his grip, and I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's house, screaming for help. The police came, but by then Adam was gone. The attic was cleaned out. No photos, no IDs, no trace of the life I had uncovered. They searched for weeks, but they never found him. It's been 2 years since that night. I've moved 3 times, changed my number, tried to erase myself. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night to the faint smell of that same perfume. And once, taped to my front door, I found another photo. Adam, smiling, standing behind me in a grocery store aisle. Story 5, The Man in the Woods. When I married Jacob, I thought I was marrying a man who loved nature. He was always talking about camping trips, hikes, and the peaceful escape of the woods. At first, I admired it. He seemed wholesome, someone who could disconnect from the chaos of the city and find peace in the quiet. But after we moved into his family's old cabin, things started to change. Jacob insisted we live far from town. "Just us," he said, smiling in that way that made me nervous. That night he would disappear into the forest for hours, telling me not to wait up. I thought he was hunting, or maybe just clearing his head. But then I started noticing things. Women's shoes by the shed, a scarf snagged on a branch, and once when I was doing laundry, I found a streak of dried blood on his shirt. "Just from skinning a deer," he explained casually. But we hadn't eaten venison once since moving in. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. When he slipped out into the woods, I followed. I stayed far back, my flashlight off, my heart pounding as I crept along the trees. He walked with purpose, deeper into the forest than I had ever gone. Finally, he reached a small clearing, and what I saw nearly made me scream. There was a pit, a deep, freshly dug pit, and inside were bones. Human bones. Jacob crouched near the pit, humming softly to himself as if tending to a garden. He placed something in the soil. I squinted through the darkness until I realized what it was. A necklace. A delicate silver chain. Not mine. Someone else's. My stomach turned as I remembered the scarf, the shoes, the business trips he claimed to take into town. I stumbled backward, a twig snapping under my shoe. Jacob's head snapped up. His eyes locked onto mine in the darkness. For a moment we just stood there, frozen. Then he smiled. "I told you never to follow me." I bolted. Branches whipped my face as I ran blindly through the woods. I didn't care where I ended up as long as it was away from him. I made it back to the cabin, slammed the door, and locked every bolt. Minutes later, Jacob arrived, calm and composed, wiping dirt from his hands. "You saw," he said softly, almost sadly. "Now you understand." "Understand what?" I sobbed. "That I can't let you go." He lunged at me, but adrenaline surged through my veins. I grabbed the heavy lamp from the table and smashed it across his face. He collapsed, dazed, and I ran. This time, for real. I didn't stop until I found a road and flagged down a passing car. The police searched the woods. They found the pit. They found the bones. They even found jewelry, clothing, and belongings of at least 6 different women. But they didn't find Jacob. He vanished into the forest like a shadow, as if the woods themselves had swallowed him whole. It's been 3 years since that night. I moved across the country, changed my name, tried to build a new life. But sometimes when I walk alone at dusk, I hear it, the faint sound of humming, the same tune Jacob used to sing in the woods, and once, carved into the bark of a tree outside my new home, I found 3 words etched deep into the wood. I found you. Story 6, The Husband Who Never Left. When I married Daniel, I thought I had found stability. He was calm, collected, and never raised his voice. Some people said he was too quiet, too reserved, but I thought it meant he was safe, solid, reliable. But safety was an illusion. A year into our marriage, Daniel's job required him to travel often. He'd be gone for days at a time, sometimes weeks. I missed him, but I trusted him. At least I wanted to. He always came back with souvenirs, stories of meetings, photos from different cities. Until one day, I found a photo that changed everything. It was in his suitcase, tucked between files. A Polaroid. Not of a business trip, not of landscapes. It was of me, sleeping. At first I told myself he must have taken it before leaving, maybe because he missed me. But then I noticed the timestamp. The date was during a week he was supposed to be in Chicago, which meant he hadn't left at all. That night I tore through the house looking for more, and I found them, hidden behind books on the shelf, taped under drawers, slipped between pages of his journals, dozens of photos of me, cooking, reading, walking in the garden, sleeping. Every photo was taken when I thought I was alone. My blood turned cold. Daniel's business trips were lies. He wasn't traveling. He was watching me. The next time he claimed he had to leave for work, I pretended to believe him. I kissed him goodbye at the door, waved as he drove away. Hours later, when night fell, I searched the house. At first, nothing. Then I noticed a vent cover slightly ajar in the guest bedroom. I pulled it open, and there it was, a hidden crawl space. Inside, I found blankets, water bottles, food wrappers, and a small camera pointed straight at the bed. He hadn't been leaving. He had been living inside the walls, watching me when I thought I was alone. My scream echoed through the empty house, and then, from the darkness of the crawl space, I heard movement. A low chuckle. "Finally found me," Daniel's voice whispered. I stumbled back, heart racing as he crawled out. His face was calm, almost amused. "I had to make sure you weren't lying to me," he said softly. "Had to know you were faithful. And you've been perfect." So far I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy vase, and hurled it at him before sprinting out the door. I ran barefoot down the road until I reached a neighbor's house, sobbing, begging for help. The police came, but when they searched the house, the crawl space was empty. The food, the camera, the blankets, gone. Daniel, too. They told me it was probably just a misunderstanding, that maybe I had misinterpreted things. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I moved away, changed my name, tried to start over. But Daniel never really left, because some nights, when I wake in the dark, I feel it, the weight of eyes on me. And once, taped to the inside of my closet door, I found a new Polaroid of me, sleeping story 7, the replica. When I met Aaron, I thought I'd finally found someone who understood me. He was quiet in public, but warm behind closed doors, complimenting the smallest things about me. My laugh, the way I tucked my hair behind my ear. He owned a small restoration studio where he fixed antiques, and his hands were always a little stained with glue and varnish. There was something tender in the way he handled objects, as if he believed everything deserved a second chance. We married in a small ceremony under late September light. For the first year, our life was ordinary and gentle. Aaron would bring home odd little objects he'd rescued, a tarnished silver spoon, a cracked porcelain figurine, and spend hours at his workbench restoring them. He always insisted I didn't go into his workshop. "It's messy," he'd say with a crooked smile, "and you hate the smell of solvents." I didn't push. Love makes you overlook things, or at least that's what I told myself. But the longer I lived with him, the more small untruths accumulated like dust. He'd tell me he'd been at the studio all night only for me to find sand in the hem of his jeans. He'd say he ran errands while the studio was closed, yet his phone would be on but unreachable. He called certain clients by pet names I'd never heard before. When I mentioned it, he'd laugh and say, "You worry too much. It's amazing what curiosity can do when it's fed by sleep and wine and that nagging feeling that you don't know the person sleeping beside you." I found the key by accident. He'd left a small brass key on the kitchen counter after returning from the studio. I picked it up because it looked like a prop from another life, heavy and ornate. I meant to ask Aaron about it later, but later never came. That night he kissed me goodnight and left for a late call. I was awake for hours, running through the day's oddities like a slow-motion movie. The key burned in my pocket. Something in me snapped. I drove to the studio. It looked like a normal storefront from the outside. Faded letters, a bell that chimed when the door opened, and a faint glow through the curtains. I slipped in, the wooden floor creaking beneath me. Tools and antiques were scattered across the workshop, but the back door, the one Aaron always kept locked, hung slightly ajar. The key fit. I pushed the door and a gust of cool, humid air rolled over me. Light from a single lamp revealed a deeper room beyond. At first I thought it was an extension of the studio, more workbenches, more objects. Then my eyes adjusted and the world tilted. Countless figures sat on chairs and stands, arranged like guests at a macabre banquet. They wore clothes, wedding dresses, sweaters, jackets, each outfit familiar in small, heart-stopping ways. Their faces were breathtakingly lifelike, skin mapped in faint veins, eyelashes delicate and exact, hair threaded into real silk wigs and sewn in place. The detail was obscene. Tiny freckles, the crease at the corner of a smile, the particular slope of a nose. Each figure's eyes were open, and they appeared to be looking at nothing and everything all at once. I froze. Then I saw the placards, names, dates. Anna, 2012. Claire, 2016. Sophie, 2018. My hands went numb. Those names were not strangers to me. I had seen them sometimes. Photos on Aaron's counter, a name mentioned once in passing as he cursed a difficult restoration. I realized with a cold arithmetic in my chest that the dates matched times when women around town had vanished or moved away abruptly. Stories I'd heard in whispers at grocery stores. Stories I had never tied to my husband. I took one trembling step forward. The head of a figure turned fractionally, eyelashes brushing a porcelain cheek. I couldn't tell if it was the lamp or something in me, but the motion felt like recognition. My breath came quick and shallow. A scrap of paper lay on the bench nearby, covered in tiny notes, measurements, paint codes, strands of hair labeled with names. At the bottom, in Aaron's neat, patient hand, a line read, "Preserve, keep, make them stay." I backed away. Every instinct screamed to run. But something else pulled me, horrified, impossible, to the far corner where a half-finished figure sat beneath a cloth. My cloth shook as I pulled it back. The face under it was mine. Not exactly mine, and not mine. Aaron had reproduced me in exquisite replication. The mole near my left eyebrow, the indented scar from childhood, the exact slope of my jaw. She was dressed in my old wedding dress, the one I never wore again after the dressmaker botched the hem. Her hair was pinned the way I wore it the morning of our wedding. She looked serene, almost peaceful, as though she had been posed for sleep. I stumbled backward, knocking a stool. A soft sound, fabric brushing fabric, made me whirl. Aaron stood in the doorway, the light haloing his face. He looked at me the way one looks at a treasured object. There was no anger on him, only a deep, patient love that belonged to someone who has the luxury of time and the conviction of an artist. "Beautiful, aren't they?" he said. His voice was the same gentle baritone that had coaxed me to sleep when we first moved in. They last longer than people do. "Why, what are you talking about?" My voice cracked like a dry branch. Aaron walked between the figures, fingers trailing along shoulders, reverently avoiding faces. "You don't understand. People leave, they disappoint, they die. But objects, we can repair them, preserve them. I can keep them safe. I can keep them just as they were, safe." I laughed, but it sounded like someone else. "These are people. You can't—" He smiled sadly. "You can't stop me from loving what I love." Panic flamed hot under my skin. I fought the urge to run, because I knew if I did he could find me anywhere. I thought of every small lie, every business trip, every evening he'd insisted on a closed door. The clean, quiet patience had masked obsession. "You did this to them," I said. My voice no longer shook. Where are they? Where are the women you replaced with these dolls?" Aaron's hand brushed my cheek as if testing a glaze. "They wanted to stay," he murmured. "They thought they could. They failed. So I finished the job." A laugh bubbled up in me that I barely recognized. "You finished them." "No," he said. "I fixed them." The light in the room shifted. Somewhere a clock chimed. In that pinched, echoing second, I understood. This man had been collecting the pieces people left behind and making them permanent. Not alive, not dead, something in between, and something he could control. Each replica a compromise of memory and possession. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Since I was young. Since I first understood that if you want someone to stay, you must keep them as they were. You must protect them from being hurt. By time, by choice." His smile softened to something like pity. "I only wanted to keep you." "You can't keep me," I said. "I'm not an object." He looked at the replica of me as if she might answer. Then he stepped closer, eyes glittering. "But you can be," he whispered. I ran. I don't remember how I made it to the door. I only remember breathing the cold night air like it was salvation and driving away without thinking where the car would take me. I called the police, hands shaking so badly the phone buzzed. When officers went to the studio, they found the front room exactly as it had been in the day, a place of clocks and restored china. But the back room was empty. The figures were gone. The bench was clear. The placards had been swept away. They asked me to press charges. They wanted names and proof. I had it, my memory, the scrap of paper with Aaron's notes. But nothing tangible remained. The police officer looked at me with something that wanted to be belief and failed. Aaron was never charged. He disappeared from town like the rest, quietly, without fuss. Some said he'd left the country for commissions. Others said he'd gone to the city and started a gallery. I sometimes think he did both. I think he kept making things. Sometimes months later, I'd dream of a soft room lit by a single lamp. In the dream, a woman sat at a bench, her hands folded on her lap. She didn't move. Her eyes seemed wet with remembered life. When I woke up, my heart would be pounding, and my sheets damp with sweat. I would reach to my bedside and for a second expect to feel Aaron's hand, like a weight. Instead, I'd find my phone, empty, and a single pearl on the nightstand, as if a necklace had once been there and fallen. Once, in a thrift store across town, I saw a wedding dress in a dusty window. For a moment in the glass, I thought I saw movement behind it, like fabric settling. I walked in, hands cold, and the dress was gone. In its place was a stitch kit, a price tag dangling like a question. I still don't know whether the women Aaron took are alive somewhere, trapped by his careful hand, or whether they failed and he simply preserved the shade he loved. I can't know. What I do know is that sometimes on the pillow beside me, I feel the imprint of lips that were not mine, and a scent, old varnish and lavender, that will never leave the house. And sometimes when I change the dressing on an old wound, I find a stray hair pinned to the bandage, glossy and too perfectly made to be mine. Story 8. The Locked Room. When I married Marcus, I thought I had found my forever. He was charming in public, attentive in private, and always said the right things at the right time. My friends called him the dream husband. He worked as a contractor, always taking odd jobs in different towns, which explained his long hours and the occasional overnight absence. I never questioned it. For the first few years, life was steady. Marcus and I moved into an old Victorian house that had been in his family for generations. Its creaky floors and grand, dusty rooms made it feel like a storybook home. But there was one room Marcus forbid me from entering, the room at the end of the hall on the 3rd floor. "The floor's unstable," he said whenever I asked. "It's dangerous. Don't even try to open it." At first I didn't mind. Old houses had plenty of quirks. But as time went on, the room grew in my imagination. I'd hear strange thuds from behind the locked door, faint dragging noises, sometimes even the sound of whispering when the house was dead silent. I tried to ignore it, but curiosity is a hungry thing. One evening, while Marcus was away on a job, I was dusting shelves in our bedroom when I found a small brass key wedged behind a book. My stomach dropped. I knew without a doubt that it belonged to the locked room. That night, with trembling hands, I walked the long hallway. Every step made the floorboards groan like they wanted to warn me. The key slid into the lock, as if it had been waiting. The door opened with a sigh. What I saw inside will never leave me. The room was filled with mannequins, dozens of them. Some wore wedding dresses. Some wore faded nightgowns. Some were unclothed, but covered in scars and markings, as though someone had carved into their plastic skin. But what froze me in place wasn't the mannequins themselves. It was their faces. Each mannequin's face was molded into a disturbingly lifelike replica of a woman. Their glass eyes shone in the dim light, their lips painted with unnatural precision. The faces weren't random. They were real, because I recognized them. There was my neighbor, who had gone missing 2 years ago. There was a cashier from the grocery store who had stopped showing up for work. There was even a girl I had once seen Marcus talking to at a gas station. Every mannequin was a woman who had disappeared from nearby towns. And in the center of the room stood a mannequin dressed in my clothes. My favorite sweater, my jeans, my shoes, its face was mine. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. That's when I noticed the camera. A small one, tucked in the corner, blinking red. Recording. Beautiful, isn't it? I spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, his smile calm and practiced. You weren't supposed to see this yet, he said, stepping into the room. His eyes lingered on the mannequin that looked like me. Not until it was finished. What is this? I stammered, backing away. It's art, he said softly, almost lovingly. They're safe here. Preserved. No one leaves me. Not anymore. He walked closer, his voice smooth, reassuring. The same voice that once whispered promises in the dark. I love you most of all. You'll be perfect, my masterpiece. You'll stay with me forever. I bolted past him, slamming the door shut behind me. My legs barely carried me down the stairs and out into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's porch, screaming for help. The police searched the house the next morning, but the locked room was empty. No mannequins, no camera, not even the mannequin of me, just dust and peeling wallpaper. Marcus claimed I had been dreaming. That stress had made me hallucinate. The officers looked at me with polite skepticism. That night I stayed in a motel, but when I pulled back the covers, there was something waiting on the pillow, a glass eye, and a note in Marcus's handwriting. Soon, you'll be perfect, too. Story 9, The Other Wife. When I married Henry, I thought I knew everything about him. He was attentive, generous, and full of little surprises. He would bring me flowers for no reason, cook me dinner after a long day, whisper secrets in the quiet hours before dawn. We had been married for 3 years when I started to notice the lies. It began small, a credit card receipt for a restaurant 2 towns over. On a night he swore he was working late. A faint trace of perfume on his shirt I didn't own. An unfamiliar set of earrings in his car's glove box. When I asked him, he smiled the same easy smile and said, "You're imagining things. You worry too much, but the lies built like storm clouds." One afternoon, I decided to follow him. He said he was heading to a construction site for work, but instead he drove 30 miles away to a quiet suburb. I watched from down the street as he parked in front of a neat little house with blue shutters. And then a woman stepped outside, carrying a toddler on her hip. Henry kissed her on the cheek before lifting the child into his arms. My heart stopped. I thought maybe it was a cousin, a family friend. But the way he looked at her, the same way he once looked at me, told me everything. Henry had another family. For weeks, I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I pretended to believe his excuses while my mind unraveled. But then, strange things started happening in our home. I'd hear footsteps in the hall at night when Henry was snoring beside me. Doors I'd locked were standing wide open in the morning. My jewelry box was rearranged, as though someone had been sifting through it. One night I woke to the sound of whispering. I crept out of bed and followed the noise down the hallway. The whispers led me to the basement door. I opened it and froze. There at the bottom of the stairs stood the woman from the blue-shuttered house. Her eyes were wide and frantic, her nightgown torn. She was whispering, help me, over and over, rocking slightly on her feet. But when I reached for her, she vanished. The basement was empty. I tried to convince myself I was dreaming. But the next night, it happened again. This time, I saw the toddler, too. He clutched at her gown, his eyes hollow, his mouth opening and closing without sound. And again, they vanished. I confronted Henry the next morning, trembling. I know about her. I know about the other family. Why are they in our house? For the first time, his smile faltered. His eyes went cold. You weren't supposed to see them, he said softly. What do you mean? I whispered. He leaned closer, his voice so calm it made my stomach turn. They were never supposed to follow me here. The world tilted. Follow you? Henry sighed almost sadly. They wouldn't stop asking where I went at night. They wouldn't stop prying. So I brought them down to the basement. I told them to wait. But they didn't stay quiet. They begged, they screamed, and then, well, you can see the result. My blood froze. He wasn't living a double life. He had ended one. The woman and child weren't alive. They were ghosts. The next night I heard them again, scratching at the basement door, their whispers rising into wails. I tried to leave the house, but every lock had been changed. Henry sat calmly in the living room polishing a knife and said, "If you leave, you'll join them." Don't make me add another voice to the chorus. I don't remember how I escaped. Only that one night, when Henry was out, the basement door burst open on its own. The woman's ghost stood there, her hollow eyes meeting mine. She whispered, "Run." I ran. I never went back. But even now, in the silence of my new apartment, I hear them sometimes, the woman and child, whispering just outside the door. And in my dreams, Henry is always there too, smiling that easy smile, whispering in my ear, "You'll be next."